Does eating too much fat matter specifically for fat loss and your best health in midlife? In some instances, it really does matter, and in others, not so much. And it's not enough to take blanketed statements like stay away from saturated fats and eat unsaturated fats, because you need to look at the nitty gritty. There are certain saturated fats that are actually really bad for you and others that are very healthy and are going to give you your best health. There are also certain unsaturated fats that are going to help with fat loss and others not so much. So today what I wanted to do was take a deep dive look at the longitudinal research specifically for midlife women. If you're going through menopause, you're in postmenopause, or you're in perimenopause, this research is specifically for you. We're going to be looking at 3 of the areas where the type of fat really does matter, and so eating too much of it could be bad. We're going to look at breast cancer, heart conditions and heart health, and fat loss. And if you're not even sure if you're eating too much fat or not enough fat for your exact age and stage of life, then you can download my free training, the macro strategy for fat loss that keeps you energized and strong. And I will post a link to that free training below. It will show you exactly how much fat, protein, and carbohydrates you'll need for your exact age and stage of life. So first, when we're talking about breast cancer, it's really important to talk about for women's health because your risk of breast cancer does increase with age. More specifically, the older you are when you've gone through menopause, the more at risk you are for breast cancer. This is because while there are many amazing protective benefits of estrogen, such as reducing your risk of osteoporosis or heart disease, the long-term exposure to prolonged estrogen actually increases your risk of breast cancer. High amounts of circulating estrogen are also found in fat tissue. So if you've also gained weight during menopause or postmenopause, you have more of that circulating estrogen, so the risk of breast cancer increases. We also know that the fat that we eat could potentially increase our risk of breast cancer. So if you read studies or maybe even the latest news article that says that high fat diets put postmenopausal women more at risk of breast cancer, then yes, the studies tend to show that this is the case. But you need to read the fine print because that type of fat matters. We're talking about saturated fats coming from red meat specifically. We're talking about high fat ratios of the unsaturated fat omega-6. For example, in sunflower oil, corn oil, and even in pumpkin seeds. Polyunsaturated fats, known as omega-6, are healthy in certain quantities. So it's not that you want to get rid of them altogether, but what ends up happening is the ratio of these omega-6s tend to be way too high in our standard diet, and having too much omega-6 fats matter when it comes to breast cancer. If you have a high fat diet made up of saturated fats that come from dairy specifically, we're talking about yogurt, for example, or cheese, then you may not be at risk at all. So higher amounts of these types of fats aren't something that I would necessarily worry about. Also, polyunsaturated fats known as omega-3s found in flaxseed and healthy fish such as salmon. These are the types of omega-3 fats that might be protective in breast cancer. Monounsaturated fats such as avocado oil or olive oil are also very beneficial. So if I see a client that has a clean bill of health, they do not have a history of breast cancer, and I see that a lot of their fats are really, really high in their overall day, but they're high coming from dairy, such as cheese and yogurt. They are high from polyunsaturated omega-3 fats and monounsaturated fats, then I'm not going to be too worried as long as they feel healthy, strong, and they have a clean bill of health from their doctor. So we just talked about how prolonged exposure to estrogen, so you have menopause later in life, for example, could increase your risk of breast cancer. But at the same effect, when your estrogen levels drop, you increase your risk of heart disease. Estrogen no longer prevents plaque buildup, so you might have more plaque buildup. It could also shift your blood panels, such as your LDL to HDL and triglyceride ratios. All of these are very important in reducing your risk of heart disease. So it's a double-edged sword. You'll want the estrogen to protect you from heart disease, but you don't want estrogen for long term because it could increase your risk of breast cancer. The general consensus, I am sure you have heard, is to stay away from saturated fats and eat all of those unsaturated fats, such as poly and monounsaturated fats. But let's take a closer look, shall we? First, I want to talk about butter because there's been so much discussion lately as to whether or not eating high amounts of butter or high amounts of fats coming from butter are beneficial for you or they're actually going to harm your health. And while I really want to tell you that butter is on the good list, the truth is that the longitudinal research, the majority of this research still shows that butter is not good for the heart. Saturated fats coming from red meat, from butter, and from fried foods do increase your risk of heart disease, at least according to the research. But there is some good news, especially for people like me if you're a cheese lover. Saturated fats coming specifically from cheese products or fermented dairy products are actually beneficial for your heart. For example, a study that was done in France, one of the main areas for cheese, they showed that individuals that ate high amounts of cheese actually reduced their cholesterol. Yay! So what about things like coconut oil, which is known as a saturated fat, and you've probably heard that it's supposed to be really beneficial. One, because it's plant-based, and two, because it has something known as medium chain triglycerides, which are easy to break down in the body and should be heart friendly. Well, the truth is the jury is still out on this, and we do not have enough research. But more studies are starting to come out that's showing that heart blood panels specifically are coming back in unhealthy numbers with increased fat content coming from coconut oil. Another supposedly healthy fat, unsaturated polyunsaturated omega-6s. Again, if the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s is too high, then again, you are at an increased risk of heart disease. So let's recap this really quickly. If you are having saturated fats, specifically coming from butter, red meats, and fried foods, you're more at risk for heart disease. You need to reduce the fat content. If you are having vegetable saturated fat coming from coconut oil, I'm sorry, but I still would take that out for right now, and at least until we know more, because more studies are coming out saying it's bad for you. And if your diet is too high in polyunsaturated omega-6 fats, then yes, you need to cut back on the fat. If your fat content is coming from saturated fats such as fermented dairies, such as cheese or certain types of yogurts, then it could actually be heart protective. And if the fat content is high in that area, you might want to keep it. The ratio of polyunsaturated omega-6s and omega-3s matters. So you want to increase the amount of omega-3s that you're having, such as, once again, flaxseed or healthy fish such as salmon. This will make sure that your omega-3 numbers are high, giving you the heart protective benefit and keeping your omega-6s in check. Monounsaturated fats such as olive oils and avocado oil is also very heart protective. So keep it coming if that fat content is higher. Fat loss in midlife. Does the amount of fat matter when it comes to fat loss in midlife? Because I think we can all agree it becomes so much harder to lose fat with age, and it becomes really easy to find it. Am I right? So if you have a really high fat diet and you're finding it hard to lose weight, it might be because you're over consuming fat. When taking into consideration how many calories actually come from a gram of fat, at least when we're comparing it to the other macronutrients, a high fat diet could actually hinder your fat loss progress. All fat in general is 9 calories per 1 gram, which makes it very, very calorie dense. Proteins or carbohydrates, they come in at 4 calories per gram. In fact, the research shows that a moderate fat diet is the best for fat loss. So that is a diet that comes in at 40% fat coming from your total calories or less. If you are seeing results and you have a fat content very, very high in monounsaturated fats, such as avocado oil or olive oil, well, that is probably why. Monounsaturated fats have a fat burning effect and they make you feel full longer and help you balance insulin. And lastly, those omega-3 fats are going to help you feel full longer, and they are a great way of getting your protein in through fish sources. You may have also heard with fat loss, you need to have high protein levels to enhance lean muscle. But Many of those protein levels come from meats, right? Meats that are high in saturated fats. When you eat high amounts of saturated fat, it actually reduces your ability to feel full for longer. Ooh. So you need to get high protein, but you need it to be low in saturated fats. Specifically, you're going to want to get your protein levels from white meats such as chicken breast or turkey breast, and you'll also want to get it from fish sources. Not only are you going to be able to get your protein content, but you're going to get your omega 3s, and you're going to do it in a healthy way that reduces the saturated fat. You're going to feel full for longer, and it's better for your overall fat loss. So what if your goal is to have both optimal health in midlife and midlife fat loss? Does eating too much fat matter? Well, we already know that for fat loss, the studies show that you should be at a fat content that's moderate, which is about 40% of your total calories. But if you are still seeing those fat loss results and the majority of your high fat diet is coming from a healthy ratio of omega 3s to omega 6s, monounsaturated fats, and saturated fats coming from dairy, specifically cheese or yogurt, well, then I think your health is also definitely thriving. So my big question for you is, where is the majority of your fat content coming from? It's really important to take a look, dive deep, and know exactly where your fat is coming from. Once again, if you don't know how much fat you should specifically be at, you can download my free training that will show you exactly how much fat to eat for your age and stage of life.